I've been traveling for a long time, and North America, I've traveled quite a bit of it, and it seems to be split into three distinct groups of travel that I've done. And so I used to go with my parents across on these long voyages. They'd be, if I remember right, it was like 6 weeks in the car, just driving around. Very, very fun for a 6-year-old kid. And that was great because it really opened my eyes to everything isn't Minnesota, which is where I'm from. We went to California and all kinds of places. So it was very mind expanding for a young child to do that. And then when I was 18, I started hopping freight trains and getting around in a very unusual kind of way. And that was also pretty mind expanding. But what I'd like to focus on, of course, is all the wilderness areas and national parks and different places that I've been as an artist. And actually, I will back up because traveling to the Pacific Northwest and then up into the Yukon Territory on a freight train and then hitchhiking, I had a profound experience that was it became a guiding light for the rest of my life, basically. But when you're hopping freight trains, you never know when your last day is anyway, but it seems a little more poignant when you're on the road, and you never know who the next ride is going to be or whether you're going to fall off the train or something. But I was up in the Yukon Territory, northwestern Canada, and I was being given a drive by somebody who was local, and he really didn't appreciate this landscape he was in. He actually said, and it really etched into my mind, that it was all a big wasteland. He said it's only good for toilet paper, which is kind of literal because they would take all the spruce trees that were growing there, very slow growing trees, and they would use them for cheaper paper, so toilet paper. And I was looking around thinking, this is fantastic up here, all this wilderness. And there was a moment we were driving where it was an overcast day for a couple days there. But as we were driving, the sky opened up, and a shaft of light went down to a previously unseen glacier tucked up in some mountains far away. And we're up high enough that it was all just a panorama of gloom in a way, which was kind of this guy's attitude. And then this light hitting the glaciers, and it really kind of blew me away. And I thought, I think I'm going to go blind in the next minute because this is some kind of a sign, isn't it? And so the importance of nature and seeing things and just seeing the beauty around you really hit home for me at that moment. And I tried to carry that forward ever since. Wow. All the locations I know will be very jealous if I answer for one. I'm fascinated by just about everywhere I go, including industrial areas like Gary, Indiana, and things like that. They all fascinate me visually, but it's the wilderness areas, the bigger areas that are just left to nature that always kind of pull at my heartstrings. I want to go there and dive into what life was like before we had so much control over so much of the map. And so right now I'm focusing a lot on not just wilderness areas, but old growth forests and places that have been around for a very long time as they were, almost like looking back in time. They really do jump out at me. A lot of my work is dependent on light. I'm very much light oriented. And so sometimes just a glimpse of like that light coming through the clouds to illuminate the glacier. It was just that moment. I probably should paint that. It's been a long time, but it's still very clear in my mind. So usually things jump out. But in general, I leave home with the idea that I will paint. I will find something to paint, but it may not, I may not be able to plan that out at all. So it's just a matter of hunting around, and it's got to jump out. I'd done a very large painting it was 40 by 60. It was pretty big, for a museum traveling show a few years ago where I went up and down the entire Mississippi River. And one of my favorite areas on the river is the bluff area, where it's a lot like around where I live in Warren, where there are mountains basically. around the river. And I got up really high on a bluff and was looking down over the river, and there's this tremendous view. It was called Buena Vista, tremendous view, really, literally. But overlooked down in the valley was an enormous, it was a power plant. They had a smokestack that came up to the height of the bluff to get the smoke out of the way and out of the place. And so it was about 600 feet high. Well, the next time I came back, that thing was gone. It was kind of a prominent marker in the painting, and I was shocked because it wasn't that long ago I painted that tower, and it must have stood there for many decades, and then it was missing. So, and oddly, or appropriately, the painting is now in a museum permanently nearby where that is. So it's kind of a documentation of a changing landscape. When I lived in Maine, I lived there for 10 years. I was going out mostly to a huge, beautiful state park in the middle of the state and other preserved areas, but mostly I went to paint lands that were preserved by the Nature Conservancy, and I worked with them on various projects. But the lands that I sought were places that were set aside for the good of everybody and for nature in particular. And so I really appreciate that mindset. And that's why a lot of the places that I go to haven't changed that much in a dramatic way. But I am about preservation. I am about making sure that people can get to their national parks and that they're preserved at the same time. And also, I've learned that in my practice, I try to be conservative in ways that I think about the environment. And some of the paints and things that I use have volatiles, gases, and some of the paints have things in them that I wouldn't want to put out in the environment. So I try to be very careful about that. And lately, I called the EPA and tried to find out, what do I do about my toxic waste? And they said, well, how much do you produce? And I said, well, in a week I might have, like a baseball worth. And they said, oh, just throw it in the garbage. And I was a little bit horrified by that. And so instead of doing that, I decided I would just kind of save it and start. I didn't want to release it to the environment. I just wanted to get it isolated somehow. And so I've been building these mountains made out of this stuff. And then that got old really quickly. And I decided that I'd try to make, because it wouldn't be good for making realist works, I started making abstract paintings with the paint that I still had on my palette that was in great quantities and still beautiful colors that I just couldn't use any other way. So I have a show coming up in the winter that'll be a first show of these abstract paintings. They're small and they're sometimes really thick and they're a lot of fun. And it's my way of conserving our resources, but also making sure that things are kind of in their place. Kind of all of it. I've been back to a lot of places sometimes, but there are, what regions though? There are places I haven't explored for sure. I've been in every state except for one, and I'm saving that for last apparently. But I've been to Alaska, which I haven't seen enough of. There are just a lot of places that I need to go. And I've got a big bunch of maps actually where I draw out all the roads that I've been on. I mean, it's a road map, a bunch of road maps put together. And so I've taken a marker and marked off all the roads, and I'm trying to get this network over the whole country. I haven't done it yet, haven't finished with that, but I'm careful about finding things. And I do like being in mountainous areas, but even the Okefenokee Swamp and places like that are just really special. So I'd like to get back to everywhere. I hope I live long enough to get back to everywhere many times. Yes, I would like to mention that in the show, there's a lot of works that have traveled with me to various places around North America, but mostly a lot of them, it seems, probably half, are from travels to Europe and Greece, Italy, France, Great Britain, places like that. And the reason that I bring that up is because the paintings there are tiny. They're minuscule. gouache paintings. Gouache is a kind of a watercolor, and so they're portable to use. And I used to travel with an oil painting set with a big easel, and it just was a lot to lug around internationally, especially. And so finding that I could travel a lot lighter was really an excellent solution for me. But they also, not only do they span in terms of where they are in the globe, it's 34 years of paintings. It's basically my very first gouache paintings in that show, as well as my latest one, actually, which is kind of odd because it jumps back in time, because I often revisit my paintings, and sometimes they take a year or two to finish. That's just normal. But the most recent one is a gouache of a big painting that's in the collection at the museum, and it's a very big painting, and I thought it'd be fun to do a little gouache of that. And the painting is from 1989 or 90, 91, 92, somewhere in there. So it's jumping back in time quite a bit. So it's interesting for me that way to see all these different areas and times at the show.